They ambushed me with a prenup 14 hours before the wedding. I left them the bill. There is a specific, suffocating kind of silence that falls over a room when an ambush is sprung. It's not the quiet of an empty house, but the heavy, pressurized stillness of a loaded gun pointed directly at your chest. I felt that silence settle over the private dining room of the country club, sinking into the mahogany-paneled walls and the plush carpet. In front of me sat a 40-page legal document, bound in a navy blue folder. Resting on top of it was a heavy Mont Blanc fountain pen, its gold nib reflecting the dim, ambient lighting of the chandelier above. To my left stood my future father-in-law, Arthur, wearing a tailored Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than the transmission I'd rebuilt that morning. To my right sat Olivia, my fiancée, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes fixed on the stem of her wine glass. And just beyond the heavy oak doors, 50 of our closest friends and family members were eating filet mignon, laughing, and giving toasts to our upcoming wedding, which was exactly 14 hours away. "It's standard boilerplate, Marcus," Arthur said, his voice dripping with the kind of practiced, patronizing warmth that corporate litigators use right before they gut you on the witness stand. "Just a formality. To protect the family's legacy, we need your signature right there on page 39. I didn't pick up the pen. Instead, I looked at the document. "My name is Marcus Thorne. I am 34 years old, and my hands are permanently stained with motor oil and carbon dust, no matter how much pumice soap I use. I own a custom automotive restoration and performance shop in Austin, Texas. I started it in a rented two-bay garage when I was 22, eating canned soup and sleeping on a cot in the office. Today, that shop spans a 30,000 square foot facility, employs 15 master mechanics, and brings in mid-seven figures a year catering to clients who want their classic muscle cars to run like modern supercars. I'm a self-made man. I built my life with my own two hands." But to Arthur and the rest of Olivia's family, a bloodline of Ivy League lawyers, hedge fund managers, and generational trust fund beneficiaries, I was just the grease monkey who somehow talked his way into the country club. I was the help, a charming, hard-working novelty, but never quite an equal. I had spent the last 2 years trying to bridge that gap. I attended their galas in an uncomfortable tuxedo, nodding politely while her uncles made passive-aggressive jokes about blue-collar labor. When it came time to plan the wedding, Arthur had generously offered to pay, but with so many strings and demands attached that I finally stepped in. I pulled out my own checkbook. I paid $90,000 for the venue, the florist, the caterer, and the string quartet, because I loved Olivia and I wanted her to have the day she had always dreamed of without her father holding it over our heads. I thought Olivia and I were a team. I thought we were building a wall around ourselves, keeping the toxicity of her family's elitism on the outside. I was wrong. I looked down at the document again. The title read, "Prenuptial Agreement and Asset Allocation." "Arthur," I said, keeping my voice perfectly level. "It's 8 o'clock on a Friday night. We are getting married tomorrow at 10 in the morning. You're handing me a legal contract right now." "We meant to give it to you sooner, Marcus, we really did," Arthur said, adjusting his cuffs. "But the associates at the firm took a little longer than expected to draft it. And really, it's nothing to worry about. Just sign it, and we can get back to the party." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply opened the folder to the first page and started reading. "I may wear steel-toe boots to work, but I negotiate commercial real estate leases, vendor contracts, and high liability insurance policies every single week. I know how to read a contract. And it didn't take me long to see the teeth hidden inside the legalese. Clause 3.1 stated that Olivia's family trust, her future inheritance, and any assets purchased with those funds were strictly her sole and separate property. That was fine. That was standard. I didn't want a dime of her family's money. But then I flipped to Clause 4.2. Any appreciation in the valuation of premarital business entities owned by the second party, Marcus Thorne, including but not limited to Thorne Automotive LLC, occurring during the duration of the marriage, shall be considered joint marital property subject to equitable distribution. Heavily weighted in favor of the first party, Olivia Sterling, in the event of dissolution. I kept reading. Clause 7 dictated that in the event of a divorce, I would be responsible for paying Olivia's legal fees. Clause 9 was a lifestyle clause that essentially penalized me financially if the marriage ended for almost any reason. This wasn't a prenup meant to protect her assets. This was a corporate takeover. It was a predatory trap designed to strip me of everything I had built, effectively transferring the sweat equity of my entire adult life into her family's portfolio the moment things went south. And then there was the timing. Presenting a prenup on the eve of the wedding is a classic coercion tactic. Even Arthur had to know that a contract signed under this kind of duress would be highly contestable in a Texas court, but that was the point. He knew that if we divorced, he had an army of lawyers who would drown me in litigation for years, bleeding my business dry just to fight it. I closed the folder. The soft thud of the heavy paper felt incredibly loud in the quiet room. I looked at Olivia. She hadn't looked at me once since her father pulled me into this room. "Olivia," I said softly, "did you know about this?" She finally lifted her head. Her eyes were slightly glassy from the wine. There was no shock on her face, no outrage on my behalf, just a mild, impatient annoyance. "Marcus, please," she sighed. "Daddy just wants to make sure everything is secure. We're going to be together forever anyway. So it doesn't even matter what the paper says. Just sign it so we can go back out there. Everyone is waiting. Just sign it." She knew. She had known for weeks, maybe months, that her father was drafting this ambush. She had smiled, kissed me, and let me write the final $40,000 check to the wedding planner just that morning, knowing full well they were going to corner me tonight. She didn't view me as a partner. She viewed me the exact same way her father did, an asset to be managed, a liability to be mitigated. It is a terrifying and strangely liberating thing when the scales fall from your eyes. The woman I thought I was marrying vanished, replaced by a stranger wearing a $2,000 rehearsal dress. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the urge to scream or flip the table. I just felt a profound, crystalline clarity. I felt the quiet, dangerous stillness of a man who suddenly realizes the door to the cage is unlocked. I looked at Arthur. I looked at Olivia. And then I smiled. It was a genuine smile, which I could tell immediately unnerved Arthur. He had expected me to fold. He had expected me to argue, maybe get defensive, and eventually succumb to the pressure of the impending wedding. He had not expected me to smile. I picked up the Mont Blanc pen. I felt its weight in my hand. I rolled it between my fingers, admiring the craftsmanship. Then, I placed it gently back onto the table, right next to the folder. "You're right, Arthur," I said, my voice calm and conversational. "This document protects the family legacy perfectly." "Excellent," Arthur said, relaxing his shoulders. "So let's get that signed." "I'm not going to sign it," I said. Olivia blinked. "Marcus, stop being stubborn. You're ruining the night." "I'm not being stubborn, Olivia. I'm being smart," I said, standing up from the leather chair. I buttoned my suit jacket. A smart businessman never signs a bad contract. And this is a terrible contract. "Now listen here, son." Arthur's voice dropped an octave. The patronizing warmth replaced by cold steel. "If you don't sign that document, there will be no wedding tomorrow." I looked at him, still smiling. "Arthur, you finally said something I agree with." Olivia stood up, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. "Marcus, what are you doing? Sit down." "I'm going home, Olivia," I said. "Well, not our home. My home. You can keep the apartment. The lease is up in 2 months anyway." "You can't do this." Her voice rose, bordering on a screech. "People have flown in from Europe. The planner is setting up the ballroom right now. You are not walking out on me." "I'm not walking out on you," I corrected her gently. "I'm walking away from a bad deal. There's a difference. Have a good night. Arthur, enjoy the filet." I turned and walked out of the private room. I didn't look back. I didn't run. I walked at a measured, deliberate pace through the main dining room. past the tables of her extended family who were laughing and clinking glasses, completely oblivious to the fact that the groom was currently exiting the building for the last time. The moment the valet handed me the keys to my truck, a restored 1978 Ford F-250, midnight blue, I got into the cab and locked the doors. I didn't turn the engine on right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. That morning, I had handed 3 personal checks to the wedding planner to cover the final balances for the venue, the caterer, and the florist, totaling just over $45,000. Because it was a Friday evening, I knew those checks wouldn't clear until Monday. With 3 taps on my screen, I initiated stop payment orders on all 3 checks. The bank charged me a $30 fee for each one. It was the best $90 I ever spent. Next, I opened my credit card app and canceled the card that had been used to book our 2-week honeymoon. In the Maldives, the flights, the overwater bungalow, the excursions, all of it, gone. If Arthur wanted to protect his family's wealth so badly, he could pay for the canceled wedding himself. I put the truck in gear and pulled out of the country club. I didn't drive back to the luxury apartment I shared with Olivia. I had nothing there that I couldn't live without. My important documents, my tools, and my life were at the shop. I drove straight to the garage. I packed a duffel bag with a few changes of clothes I kept in the office, grabbed my dog, a golden retriever named Buster, and loaded him into the passenger seat. By the time I hit Interstate 10, heading west toward the New Mexico border, my phone was vibrating so hard it was dancing in the cup holder. 15 missed calls from Olivia. 7 from Arthur. A barrage of text messages ranging from "Where are you?" to "You coward. Get back here right now," to "My lawyers will destroy you." I didn't read them all. I didn't need to. I rolled down the window, letting the cool Texas night air fill the cabin. The rumble of the V8 engine was the only soundtrack I needed. I powered down the phone and tossed it into the center console. The drive was exactly what I needed. 500 miles of open highway to decompress, to let the adrenaline fade, and to realize just how incredibly close I had come to signing my life away. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt like a man who had just stepped off the train tracks a second before the locomotive rushed past. It's been 14 months since that night. I never went back. I hired a lawyer to handle the unwinding of the apartment lease and to send a cease and desist letter to Arthur when he tried to threaten me with a frivolous breach of contract lawsuit regarding the wedding expenses. It turned out, once the vendors realized my checks had bounced, they went straight to the Sterling family for payment. Arthur had to write a $50,000 check for a party that never happened. I found a deep, quiet satisfaction in that. Thorne Automotive is doing better than ever. We expanded our facility last month, adding a dedicated fabrication wing. I bought a house out in the hill country with a big yard for Buster, and on the weekends, I don't wear tuxedos. I wear boots, I drink cheap beer with my crew, and I don't apologize for any of it. People think that walking away from a toxic situation has to be a massive, dramatic explosion. They think it requires a screaming match, broken dishes, and a grand speech. It doesn't. Sometimes, the ultimate revenge is just recognizing your own worth, putting the pen down, and driving away. They spent years trying to make me feel like I wasn't enough for their world. The night I walked out, I finally realized their world wasn't enough for me.